Young and the Restless weekly spoilers March 10th to 14th. Jack confesses and Chance gets kidnap clue. Monday, March 10th on the Young and the Restless Audra Charles, Zuleika Silver, sits down, talks to Nate Hastings, Sean Dominic. She tells him that Holden Novak, Nathan Owens, wants to be her friend. She doesn't want to keep secrets, she doesn't want to hide anything. Clearly, she's falling for Nate, which is something Audra never planned to do. She's willing to cut Holden out of her life. But she reminds Nate that Holden is the only source of information that they have on Damian Kane, Jermaine Rivers. She thinks he's willing to spill some tea because Audra says that Holden resents Damian because they were friends. Then he went to work for him and the way he talked to them the other day, like get on the plane, get back to work, mind your business, that kind of thing. She said that Holden already told her that Damian has this temper. Nate tells her that he trusts her and he agrees that they need to keep that pipeline of information open. So when Holden texts asking her about being his friend, then Nate uses her phone and he texts back as Audra, yes, they can be friends. Audra and Nate are really hoping that the cancer doctor has good news for Amy Lewis, Valerie Pettiford. And that Damian is going to stay in town for his mom. That's their hope. Over in Kidnapping Central, Phyllis Summers is working out. You're in a psychiatric hospital after being kidnapped and thinking, hey, I'm going to do some Pilates. Phyllis is trying to stay strong so they can fight off this mystery person. She and Sharon Newman are bickering as usual. Sharon is busy trying to solve the riddle. Phyllis tells her she already solved it, but then she doesn't want to tell Sharon the answer in case they were supposed to be competing against each other. On the Young and the Restless, Phyllis finally relents and tells her that the thing that means everything and costs nothing is forgiveness, and that could be several things, love. Phyllis then doubles over in pain and they think she's been poisoned, and the captor says Phyllis wasn't playing the game. Sharon begs their mystery tormentor for help, and after being given some clues, she finds a bottle of water with the antidote to save Phyllis. Y&R spoilers. Nick and Billy Abbott's reluctant alliance to find missing women. Meanwhile, Y&R spoilers show that Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, and Billy Abbott are discussing Phyllis being missing in action. They've both exhausted any contacts they can call trying to find her, and they realize something is really wrong with both Sharon and Phyllis going on. This can't be a coincidence, and they agree to work together to find Phyllis and Sharon, but this is a very reluctant alliance. These guys are not fans of each other. It's not as bad as Adam Newman, Mark Grossman, and Billy, not that toxic, but it's not great. Summer schemes and Holden's Genoa City adventures on Young and the Restless. On Tuesday's Young and the Restless we have Summer Newman, Allison Lanier, causing a rift between Kyle Abbott, Michael Mealer, and Claire Grace Newman, Haley Aaron. Summer is starting some drama to try and break them up because Kyle and Claire are supposed to be having date night at the GCAC. But Summer overheard Kyle last week making the plans with Claire, and since we're going to see Claire sitting all alone at the bar having a drink, clearly that means Summer has inserted herself in there. And Summer is trying to upset Claire by running Kyle late. I'm sure Summer will let her know that he was late because he was with her. Hopefully, Kyle will get out in front of it and realize what's happening and reassure Claire, but we'll see. Another interesting spoiler is that Holden broadens his horizons in Genoa City. Next, we're going to talk about what that means and the next big move that Damian's sketchy employee makes on Y&R. Claire and Holden may heat things up. Claire is sitting at the bar at the GCAC. She's looking gorgeous, red dress, hair all done nice, and she's trying out a martini. So, Holden approaches her and starts making some small talk. Maybe he is looking for somebody because he doesn't think he has a chance with Audra, or maybe he just hits on all women. I think it'd be pretty interesting honestly if Kyle shows up late for the date because of Summer and sees Claire chatting up that really hot guy, because we have to all agree, right? Holden is super hot. Meanwhile, Phyllis's captor forces her into a very tough decision. And of course he wants her to play the game. Punish her for not, and we'll see. She said she'd never forgive Sharon, so maybe they are trying to push her to test that theory. Phyllis and Sharon's fight for control and Tracy's surprising news. Wednesday, March 12th, Season 52, Episode 109. Phyllis and Sharon decide to take control. I don't know if they're going to play the game hard or if they're just both going to refuse to play the game, and Chance is there to comfort Summer. No doubt about Phyllis, and I wonder if he has any inkling that Summer just told Nick that she can't be with Chance because she's still too upset about the investigation and him, pursuing Daniel Romalotti, Michael Graziadei, without looking into other possible suspects. Tracy Abbott, Beth Maitland, share some surprising news with Jack, and we have a scene next week with Jack and Diane Jenkins, Susan Walters, and Jack's sister Tracy. They're all sitting together and Tracy's talking about how happy she is with Alan Laurent, Christopher Cousins. And he lets her know that he would like to propose and he would if he thought that she would say yes, that he would marry her right now. She's completely shocked. So I wonder if Tracy's surprising news is, yeah, we're doing this thing. Spoilers for Young and the Restless. Victor's doubts, Adam's reunion, and a shocking confession. Thursday, March 13th. Episode 110 of the current season. Victor Newman, Eric Braeden, is questioning Adam's decision-making. Obviously, he does that all the time, but I wonder if it's about the Abbotts and he's refusing to, spin bad press about Jack at Newman Media, which he already told him he didn't want to do. Coming up on The Young and the Restless, Adam is reuniting with Chelsea Lawson Newman, Melissa Claire Egan, which is what Victor wanted him to do. So I feel like this is more professional than a personal related spoiler. Phyllis and Sharon fall into a trap that their kidnapper has set and Jack is making a confession to Diane. Now the best confession would be that he's the one that put Phyllis and Sharon in that room. I doubt it though, but wouldn't that be a twist? I still am wondering if this person is entirely wicked or just trying to get Phyllis and Sharon to bury the hatchet between them that is driving everybody in town crazy. Survival, secrets, and a potential cremation cover-up. Friday, March 14th. We're going to wrap up the week with Sharon and Phyllis fighting for their survival. So that sounds like maybe this kidnapper doesn't have a benevolent agenda and maybe it is really someone who wants to punish them and chance comes to Billy and Nick with a lead and I wonder if he went to check out Ian Ward's, Ray Wise. Cremation story since they had mentioned Ian's dead and it's like, do we know that still reeling from the recent chaos that had unfolded in the wake of Nikki's kidnapping. And the Abbotts were at the center of a storm that no one saw coming. Jack Abbott sat alone in the dim light of his office at Jabot, a glass of scotch in hand, replaying the last few weeks in his mind. The guilt was eating away at him, and he knew the time for silence was over. Jack's confession. Phyllis had been the first to sense something was off with Jack. His usual calm confidence had been replaced by restless pacing and sleepless nights. Jack, she had said gently, stepping into his office earlier that morning. Whatever's going on, it's written all over your face. Talk to me. At first, Jack brushed her off, claiming he was just worried about Ashley and her fragile mental state after returning from Paris. But Phyllis wasn't buying it. She'd known Jack too long, and the tremor in his voice told her this was about something much deeper. Finally, after hours of silence and an empty office, Jack picked up the phone. Diane, we need to talk, he said, his voice heavy with regret. When Diane arrived, she could tell something was wrong the moment she looked into his eyes. Jack, what is it? She asked, concern softening her tone. Jack took a deep breath and looked down, his hands trembling slightly. It's time I come clean, he began. About what happened the night Nikki was taken. Diane froze, her pulse quickening. Jack, what do you mean? You weren't. I was there, he interrupted, his voice breaking. Not at the warehouse where she was found, but before that. I followed Jordan. The words hit Diane like a thunderclap. Jack had been secretly tracking Jordan after suspecting she wasn't truly gone. He hadn't told anyone. Not Victor, not Nikki, not even Diane, because he thought he could handle it himself. I thought if I could find out where Jordan was hiding, I could end this nightmare for good, Jack confessed. But I got too close. I saw someone helping her. Someone inside Genoa City. Diane's eyes widened. Who? Jack hesitated, then whispered the name that would send shockwaves through the Abbott and Newman families. Claire. Chance's discovery. Meanwhile, at the Genoa City Police Department, Chance Chancellor was staring at the evidence board. Photos, notes and timelines covered the wall, but something still didn't add up. Nikki's kidnapping had all the hallmarks of Jordan's manipulative style, but there were new clues that didn't fit the pattern. Paul Williams had once told him that sometimes the smallest clue breaks the biggest case. And that's exactly what Chance found. A surveillance photo from a gas station outside Genoa City, time-stamped 2 days before Nikki's disappearance. A black SUV was parked near the back, and the blurry figure beside it matched Jordan's build. But she wasn't alone. Chance leaned closer. Wait a second, he muttered. The second figure, taller, broader, was wearing a Jabot security badge. He quickly ran the footage through enhancement software, and when the face came into focus, his jaw tightened. No way, he whispered. It was Kyle Abbott. But Chance wasn't ready to jump to conclusions. Kyle had been known to make questionable decisions, but would he really help Jordan? Or was he being set up? As he cross-referenced phone records, another surprise emerged. Multiple calls between an unregistered burner number and Jabot's private security line the night Nikki vanished. Whoever was behind this had inside access and deep connections. Jack comes clean to Chance. Later that afternoon, Jack walked into the police station, his expression grim. "I need to speak to Detective Chancellor," he said to the officer at the front desk. Chance emerged moments later, clearly surprised to see him. "Jack, what brings you here?" Jack exhaled slowly. "It's time I tell you everything." As they sat in Chance's office, Jack explained how he had been following Jordan, convinced she was planning another attack. He admitted to tracking her movements, paying off a private investigator, and withholding information from Victor. But then came the revelation that made Chance's pen freeze over his notepad. "I saw someone drop off supplies to Jordan," Jack said quietly. "I couldn't see clearly, but I thought it was someone young, someone with access to Jabot's vehicles." Chance leaned forward. "Jack, you realize that description fits your son?" Jack nodded slowly. "Yes. And that's what's been keeping me up every night." Chance studied him carefully. Jack's voice was steady, but his eyes told a story of guilt and fear. "If Kyle's involved, I'll find out," Chance said firmly. "But if he's being framed, we'll clear his name." The kidnap clue. As the investigation deepened, Chance's instincts kicked into overdrive. He returned to the scene where Nikki had been held, a decrepit cabin in the woods outside town. The police had combed the area weeks ago, but Chance felt something had been overlooked. Kneeling near the fireplace, he spotted a small scrap of fabric wedged between two bricks. It was a torn piece of designer silk, recognizable to anyone familiar with Genoa City's elite fashion circles. He carefully sealed it in an evidence bag. "This isn't Jordan's style," he murmured. "But it is Diane's." Could Diane have unknowingly come into contact with Jordan? Or was someone trying to frame the Abbotts entirely? As Chance drove back to the station, his mind raced through the possibilities. If Jack's confession was true, and Kyle was somehow tangled in this mess, it could destroy the entire Abbott family's legacy. But one thing was certain. The kidnapper wasn't working alone. The confrontation. When Jack returned home that evening, he found Kyle waiting for him in the living room. The tension was thick. "Dad, I know you talked to Chance," Kyle said, his tone sharp. "He came by Jabot today asking questions about me." Jack sighed. "I had no choice, Kyle. You need to tell me the truth. Were you in contact with Jordan?" Kyle's eyes flashed with indignation. "Of course not. Why would I help that psycho?" But Jack wasn't convinced. "Then why was your security badge spotted on surveillance footage with her?" Kyle froze. "What?" Jack handed him a still photo Chance had shared. Kyle's expression shifted from anger to confusion to fear. "That's not me," he whispered. "Dad, someone's setting me up." Diane entered the room just in time to hear those words, her face pale. "Jack, what if that piece of fabric they found was mine?" Jack turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "I lost one of my scarves weeks ago," Diane said softly. "The same one that matches what Chance described." A heavy silence fell over the room.